Let's begin configuring the Accounts Payable Maestro workflow. The process is divided into 4 parts, and in this section, we'll focus on setting up the tasks that extract the invoice, bring in the purchase order details, and perform the matching. Start by clicking the Start event. Change it to a Message Start event and rename it as Vendor Sends Invoice. A Message Start event signifies the initiation of the process when an email is received or an incoming message arrives. This can be set up to trigger the workflow automatically when an email arrives, a new item enters a queue, or an external system sends data through an API. To configure it, select Wait for Connector Event as the action. Then choose the appropriate connector and connection. Connections facilitate communication between the user and external applications. If an existing connection is available, select it. Otherwise, click Connection to create one. From Trigger, choose Email Received, as this event needs to be triggered when an email is received. Once the implementation settings are configured, specify the email folder where the connection should reside. The next step is to extract invoice details from the previous event. For this, configure the next automation, which processes the received document and waits for completion before continuing. We'll use a service task for this purpose. A service task allows you to configure a call that starts and waits for execution. Select the task, change it to Service Task, and rename it as Extract Invoice Info. With Duke, configure the action as Start and Wait for RPA Workflow. This ensures that the workflow waits for the connector event, in this case, the Vendor Sends Invoice event, to trigger the process. Next, select the desired automation and configure the input. In this case, the only required input is the sender's email address. Once configured, check the Output section. The system will automatically populate output variables. Each activity output generates a variable of a specific data type. These variables store the output of one activity and can then be reused as input in other activities throughout the project. Our next step involves retrieving the purchase order PO details. To do this, we trigger another deployed automation. We select the task, change it to a service task, and configure the action as Start and Wait for RPA Workflow. We then choose the required automation in the input section and provide the PO number using the variable from the previous automation. Once configured, we check the Output section. The following step is to match the data from the invoice against the corresponding pod. For this, we use another deployed automation. This automation verifies if the invoice's order details match the details extracted from the purchase order. We select the task, configure the action as Start and Wait for RPA Workflow, and then select the required automation in the input section. We pass the output variables from the previous process, using PO details and PO items variables from the Get PO Details process and Invoice Details, and invoice items from the Extract Invoice Info with DU process. This RPA workflow performs a rule-based check to determine if the invoice details match the PO details. If a mismatch is found, the process captures the error in the error output variable. If not, it captures the match status. We can also add a raw JSON object in the variables view to define our input payload. To do this, we add the JSON data in the variable field, then switch to the JSON editor to interact with the data in a structured format. PO details from the extracted document are automatically organized in this way. This concludes the first part of our demonstration. Thank you for watching.